And in this session, we will have 5 presentations, and at the end, we will have time to question or suggestions. So the first presentation is Reciprocal Teaching Style, How to Increase Student Situational Interest. And the speaker is Vanessa Lentillon-Kaestner. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Today I will present a study about the reciprocal teaching style and more specifically how we can increase students' situational interest in physical education. This work was conducted with my colleague Cédric Roure at the University of Teacher Education in the state of Vaud in Lausanne in Switzerland. So why this study? Motivation is very important in physical education. In this study, we focus on situational interest. Situational interest means the interest students feel during the activity in the moment. The reciprocal teaching style is sometimes used in physical education, but we still do not know well what makes it really motivating for students. We studied 3 main factors. First, dyad composition, in other words, who works with whom. Second, perceived competence. This means how good students think they are. And third, relatedness. This means how close and comfortable students feel with their partner. Our research question was, what increases situational interest in the reciprocal teaching style? This research was based on 2 consecutive studies. In the study 1, students worked in badminton. We compared 2 types of dyads, self-selected dyads and ability-based dyads. In the study 2, we worked in football and gymnastics. Here, we wanted to better understand the role of competence and relatedness in reciprocal teaching style when using self-selected dyads. In total, around 300 students took part in this research. In both studies, we use the reciprocal teaching style. Students worked in pairs. One student performed the task. The other student observed and gave feedback. Then they changed roles. So students learned together and helped each other. We measured 3 things using validate scales. We measured situational interest through 5 dimensions: novelty, instant enjoyment, exploration intention, attention demand, and challenge. We also measured perceived competence through 3 items and feelings of relatedness through 2 dimensions: feeling intimate with peers and feeling accepted by peers. Concerning the study design, in the first study, students had 6 badminton lessons. For the 3 first lessons, some worked with a partner they chose, while others were paired according to their ability level. Then, for the last 3 lessons, they switched groups. In the second study, Students simply chose their own partner in 4 football and gymnastics lessons. The key result in the study 1 is very clear. Self-selected diets systematically produce higher situational interest, higher perceived competence, and stronger relatedness compared to ability-based diets. Concerning the study 2, first, we checked whether football and gymnastics were experienced differently by students. The results show clear differences for situational interest and perceived competence. So for these variables, football and gymnastics were analyzed separately, but there were no clear differences for feelings of relatedness. Students felt almost the same level of closeness and acceptance in both activities. For this reason, we combine the 2 groups for the cluster analysis, focusing on relatedness. In the second study, we wanted to understand why self-selected diets produce higher situational interest in reciprocal teaching style. The results showed that relatedness is the main driver of situational interest, while perceived competence plays only a minor role. The cluster analysis retains 3 profiles: high, medium, and low relatedness. The results of the maneuver revealed a significant main effect for feeling of relatedness and situational interest for the cluster profiles. The 3 clusters reflected high, medium, and low scores on the feeling accepted and feeling intimate dimensions. The results of the follow-up ANOVAs indicated that students perceived the reciprocal teaching style differently according to their scores on feelings of relatedness. Stronger feeling of relatedness were associated with a more positive experience of reciprocal teaching style, more precisely with higher situational interest. What does it mean? It means that students are more engaged when they feel good with their partner. If they feel accepted, comfortable, and safe, they are more interested in the task. So in this context, motivation is strongly linked to social connection. To conclude, self-selected diets appear to be a promising way to increase situational interest within reciprocal teaching style. When students choose their own partner, they often feel more connected, which can make the learning situation more engaging. For teachers, the message is simple. Letting students choose their partner can be a good strategy. It's easy to organize, it saves time, and it can increase students' motivation. It also shows that peer relationships are very important in physical education. Thank you for your attention. I will be happy to answer your question. And finally, I would like to thank the Spectrum Institute for Teaching and Learning for their prize given to our paper on this research published in 2023 in Research Quarterly for Exercise and Sport. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. The next presentation is Reciprocal, Style of Teaching, Self-Transcendence, Climate, Teamwork, and Flourishing. And the speaker is Maria Elpiniki Lygourioti.
Good morning, everyone. I am Maria Elpiniki. I am a physical education teacher, and I am a PhD student at University of Thessaly. So I am going to present our study, Reciprocal Style of Teaching, Self-Transcendence, Climate, Teamwork, and Flourishing. Our framework focuses on the reciprocal style, known for promoting peer interaction. During the pre-impact phase, the teacher design criteria sheets. In the impact phase, students choose their task, working in groups of 5 to 6, rotating the observer role. Crucially, in the post-impact phase, feedback shifts entirely to the learners. Because observers explicitly assist their peers, this naturally fosters a self-transcendence climate. This means the desire to help others succeed. To measure this, we aligned achievement goal theory with the SOTS model. This diagram illustrates the SOTS model, expanding traditional theories across a self-centered to selfless axis. On the right, self-enhancement represents competitive, ego-centered goals. In the middle, self-improvement focuses on personal mastery. On the left, this is the new self-transcendence dimension. This is a completely selfless focus on improving with both personal and peers' competence. The reciprocal style provides the perfect structural tool to activate this selfless dimension. This confirmatory analysis by Sereli and Papaioannou confirms the structural validity of the teacher-initiated climate. Notice the strong positive correlation of 0.84 between helping a peer, self-transcendence, and personal growth, self-improvement, providing they are very close. In contrast, self-transcendence and competitive self-enhancement are negatively linked. Building on this solid foundation, our study takes the next step, shifting the focus to the student-created climate. This brings us to our primary aim. We wanted to examine this student-created climate when using the reciprocal style. We tested this in general, experimental, and model high school, where high academic pressure often challenges student well-being. We aim to evaluate it if the reciprocal style fosters a pro-social environment and ultimately if it promotes teamwork and student flourishing. We conducted a 6-week quasi-experimental study with 316 10th grade students. 199 students formed the experimental reciprocal group and 117 the control group. Pre- and post-tests were administered around a 12-lesson intervention delivered by 5 experienced PE teachers. We used purposive sampling across diverse school types to ensure robust representative findings. The control group followed a traditional teacher-centered approach. The experimental group experienced an adaptive reciprocal style. Working in interest groups of 5 to 6, students choose 2 out of 5 sport modules. Decision-making for execution and feedback shifted entirely to the students, who rotated between observer and doer roles, using specific criteria sheets. Independent manipulation checks confirmed on an 87% compliance rate with reciprocal route exclusively within the experimental group. To ensure tool reliability, we tested the 3-factor structure of the peer-initiated climate. As the table shows, confirmatory factor analysis demonstrated excellent fit indices at baseline. Students clearly distinguish between helping teammates, self-transcendence, improving themselves, self-improvement, and outperforming others, self-enhancement. This structure remained highly stable at the post-test, allowing us to proceed confidently. We used 3 main questionnaires. First, to measure the peer-initiated climate, we adapted the CESIS scale. We used the specific STEM. Over the last 3-4 weeks, most of classmates, we wanted to see if the students felt their peers encourage helping each other, which is self-transcendence. If they focus on personal progress and learning new things, that is self-improvement, or if they only cared about who achieved the best results, which represent self-enhancement. Second, we measured teamwork to assess its collaboration and success. Finally, the Flourishing scale evaluated overall psychosocial well-being. All scales demonstrated excellent in internal reliability. Looking at the student-created climate, the left figure shows a significant time by group interaction for self-transcendence. The experimental group, blue line, showed a significant increase, confirming the reciprocal style fostered a supportive peer environment. Conversely, for the competitive self-enhancement climate, right figure, the control group actually became more competitive over time, while the reciprocal style, blue line, decreased this ego-centeredness in the experimental group. Self-improvement saw no significant interaction. Regarding our main outcomes, the left figure shows a highly significant interaction for teamwork. The experimental group reported increased teamwork, while the control group, red line, decreased, indicating the intervention successfully promoted collaborative behaviors. For Flourishing, right figure, students in the traditional control group showed a noticeable decline in well-being over time. In contrast, the experimental group maintained their flourishing level, suggesting the reciprocal style act as a valuable protective factor. Synthesizing our findings, three mechanisms stand out. First, the enhanced decisional shift. By empowering students to choose modules and work in larger groups with rotating observers, we significantly broaden their active involvement and social interaction. Second, the power of the partnership. Continuously switching roles, teaches students to put personal display aside to support peers, embodying self-transcendence and catalyzing teamwork. Finally, this acts as a protective shield. Peer-driven, process-focused feedback minimizes social comparison, protecting students' flourishing. Theoretically, explicitly separating the self-transcendence climate from the self-improvement climate provided a clearer picture. The reciprocal style specifically boosted self-transcendence and decreased self-enhancement, aligning perfectly with the SESIT model assumption for peer tutoring. Methodologically, by implementing a CAS experimental design with 316 students in real school conditions, we offer solid field-based evidence. Ultimately, our research confirms that the reciprocal style provides the essential decisional framework to foster teamwork and protect student psychosocial well-being in modern physical education. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. The next presentation is Unpacking Peer Feedback in the Reciprocal Style, Qualitative Analysis in High School Volleyball, and the speaker is Umut. Welcome.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. I am Umut Cetin, a newly graduated physical education teacher. Today, I will present our study conducted with Halil Emre Çınargür and Professor Gökçe Erturan from Pamukkale University, titled Unpacking Peer Feedback in the Reciprocal Style, a qualitative analysis of feed-forward in high school volleyball. Assessment for learning asks three core questions. Where are learners going? Where are they right now? And crucially, how do we close the gap? Essentially, it uses daily dialogue and observation to support lasting learning. Blake and William translated this philosophy into 5 strategies: sharing learning intentions, generating evidence, feed-forwards, peer assessment, and self-assessment. Of these 5, feed-forward sits at the heart of the study. It's the mechanism through which the observer role in reciprocal style is supposed to function, providing the doer with information about where they need to improve and how to do so. Why does feed-forward matter so much? In 1996, Kluger and Denisi conducted a meta-analysis, drawing on over 3,000 studies across school, university, and workplace settings to examine the effects of feedback interventions on performance. Their finding was surprising, even counterintuitive. Feedback that focuses on evaluating performance, that's telling someone how good or bad they were, can actually worsen outcomes. It may decrease motivation, and it does not develop skills. But feedback that informs the learner where they need to improve and how to do so, that's genuine feed-forward, had a strongly positive effect on learning. The difference is illustrated directly on screen. An evaluative comment says, "Good job, well done, 7 out of 10. A feed-forward comment says, "Bend your knees more before contact with the ball." One closes a conversation, the other opens a path to improvement. Here is the research question that guided our study. What is the nature of feed-forward statements and other feedback types produced by high school students during peer assessment activities structured within the reciprocal teaching style? To our knowledge, this is the first study to examine feed-forward in the specific combination of conditions within Style C in physical education contexts, focused on volleyball skills, using rubric-based assessments, and through open-ended written commentary from the observer. Let me briefly describe the study context. We worked with 127 9th and 10th grade high school students across 4 physical education classes in Denizli, Turkey. 3 male, 1 female per-service physical education teachers facilitated the lessons as the scope of the teaching practice course. The unit covered 2 volleyball skills, the forearm pass and overhead pass, Each skill was addressed across 2 dedicated lesson weeks, giving us 55-minute lessons in each week. The instructional design was grounded in the reciprocal style. In each session, the observer watched their partner's performance, consulted a teacher-developed rubric with clearly observable movement criteria, and wrote their assessments on an open-ended task sheet. This is an example of task sheet, including a rubric assessment for Syrmpas. Those task sheets were collected at the end of every lesson, and they become our primary data source. We analyzed the data using inductive content analysis following Crosswell. This means we let the themes emerge from the data itself. We did not import a pre-existing classification framework. We used the constant comparative method throughout. To ensure rigor, 3 independent researchers coded all data separately. We then compared our codes, discussed disagreements, and reached consensus, establishing inter-rater reliability at each stage of the analytical process. As you can on the screen, our analysis of the student-generated feedback revealed 3 overarching themes. Let's look at each of them in detail, starting with most encouraging finding. Theme 1, Subtheme 1, represents what the reciprocal style is designed to produce: corrective, actionable feed-forward. These are comments that are specific, forward-looking, and directly guide the learner toward the technically correct movement pattern. For example, one observer wrote, "You should move more on your toes and toward the ball." That's a clear criterion reference instruction. The students has read the rubric, identified a gap, and communicate in language the doer can act on. 2 other examples are particularly revealing because our study design included a 2 assessment sequence. Observers first wrote feedback after the doer's initial attempt, then observed a second attempt and recorded whether improvement had occurred. Another student wrote, "You need to go under the ball. If you get under it, you will play better." She got under the ball and used more force. The observer gave feed forward, the doer applied it, and observer documented the improvements. This is the learning group that reciprocal style is designed to create, and here we can see it working. These findings are consistent with Panadero, Howell, and Kojekula, who all found that rubrics facilitate the production of feed-forward and positively affect learning outcomes. The rubric was not just a scoring tool, it was a thinking scaffold for the observer. Here is the, Theme 1 also contained 2 additional subcategories that were learning-oriented but fell short of genuine feed-forward. Subtheme 2, Volley Judgment, consists of statements where the observer evaluates the doer and reaches a global verdict, typically affirming competence. For example, "She did most things correctly. She already did everything well." This is a positive, encouraging comment, but it tells the doer nothing about where or how to improve. We believe this tendency reflects the norms these students have been exposed to. Research by Ince and Hünük and Nikes and colleagues shows that when physical education instruction is predominantly teacher-centered, students become accustomed to receiving and producing competence confirming, rather than improvement-directed feedback. Subtheme 3, behavior-focused, captures comments where the observer notes attitudinal or conduct-related factors rather than movement technique. For instance, "She should stop using her feet. You should treat the ball more gently." This shows that students were observing the whole performer, not just the skill, and that they were sensitive to behavioral self-regulation during motor learning, a useful observation but different in nature from technical feed-forward. Theme 2 reflects something very recognizable about adolescent learners, and perhaps something all of us have experienced in our own teaching. A significant portion of the feedback was not technically instructional at all. It was social and emotional. Students were using the observer role, encourage, support, and affirm their peers. Subtheme 1, motivational encouragement, includes comments like, Don't be afraid of the ball. Hitting a forearm pass is not end of the world. You can do it. And keep working with determination. These comments are genuinely kind and from the perspective of self-determination theory. Observers serve the related needs. They make the drawer feel supported and less alone. They may even increase perceived competence, but they not the close technique gap. They are not feed forwards. Subteam 2, positive bias toward friend, showed something even more striking: friendship dynamics visibly shaping the assessment. One observer wrote, "She has nothing to improve. She plays flawlessly." And another, in a comment, says, "Simultaneously charming and entirely unhelpful as a peer assessment. Play a little worse. I almost forgot to score you because I was so busy watching." The observer role here has been entirely subordinated to peer relationship. The students prioritized social belonging over instructional accuracy. This is not a failure of character. It's a predictable outcome of adolescent social development, but it does mean that left unaddressed, the observer role will often drift away from its instructional purpose. Team 3 was the most difficult finding in our dataset, and in some ways the most important. Subteam 1, bullying and mockery, captures comments that were demeaning, ridiculing, or actively harmful to the peer being observed. Let me read them you directly. One student wrote, "She should use her brain a little." Another wrote, "She has no hands. She needs a hand transplant. She has no coordination." These comments are antithetical to every goal of quality physical education. They may damage the psychological safety of the learning environment. They may harm the doer, and they pervert the observer role entirely, from a tool learning into a vehicle for social aggression. Stockdale and colleagues documented that physical education settings are structurally more susceptible to peer bullying than other school contexts. The combination of physical exposure, performance evaluation, and group observation creates conditions in which mockery can emerge, especially among adolescents. Our data confirm this. Subteam 2, minimal and passive response. Some students wrote only the barest minimum. Jump and bravo. These responses indicated that the students has not engaged with the rubric criteria, has not observed the performance analytically, and has not fulfilled the role of the observer in any meaningful sense. We believe this reflects a lack of preparedness. Students who do not know how to give feed forwards will either avoid the task or default to social shortcuts. But subteams in Team 3 point the same underlying issue. The observer role cannot be assumed, it must be taught. Let me now synthesize what the three teams tell us. Team 1, while rubrics provide necessary scaffolding, they are not enough on their own, because physical education instruction in Turkey is traditionally teacher-centered. Students often default to simple value judgments rather than corrective feed-forwards. Team 2, a self-determination theory predicts adolescents prioritize social belonging. This friendship bias often prevents actionable feedback. Team 3, physical education environments are vulnerable to negative peer dynamics, meaning the reciprocal style carries a real risk of mockery in unmonitored. In conclusion, the reciprocal style can produce genuine feed-forwards, but simply handing out a worksheet is not sufficient. So what should practitioners do? We must explicitly model the feedback process, teach students how to give feed forwards, not just what to observe. Establish clear, respectful norms from day one and design highly specific task sheets. Most importantly, monitor continuously to proactively address any bullying. The bottom line, the reciprocal style is a powerful tool, but the teacher's active role in scaffolding is absolutely critical. The complete reference list on screen. Thank you very much for your attention and patience.
The next presentation is underlying mechanisms of command, practice, and self-check styles, the role of executive function and performance calibration. And the speaker is Athanasius Kolovelonis.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This presentation is about a project that I ran with my colleague Syrmpas. We are from the University of Thessaly, and I'm going to describe the rationale and the aims of the project, the design and the methods, some examples of the implementations, some first results. So I would like to thank you. This project is supported by Spectrum, so I would like to thank Spectrum for this support. Previous research on Spectrum teaching in physical education focused mainly on the effects of various teaching styles on students' sport performance and skill acquisition and motivational variables. Limited research has explored the effects of different teaching styles on students' cognitive and metacognitive aspects of learning and performance. This project focuses on expanding this previous research, focusing on cognitive and metacognitive variables, and in particular in executive functions and performance calibration. Moreover, we focus on three teaching styles, mainly on the self-check style and the commanded practice style. Executive functions is a higher order cognitive processes responsible for cognitive flexibility and adaptability at goal-oriented behaviors that are triggered in novel, challenge, and complex situations when concentration and attention are needed. In the literature, there are a general consensus that there are three core executive functions: inhibition, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Executive functions are critical for success in school and in sport, the self-regulation of learning and metacognitive control. There have been developed various types of programs that aim to improve students' executive functions. Among them, physical activity programs have been found that can effectively trigger executive functions. In a line of research, we have examined a special kind of games in physical education that were cognitively enriched, and we found that these games could improve students' executive functions effectively. However, they are not all physical activity programs effective, and there is a hypothesis that the teaching methods used in these programs may partially based this difference may partially based on the different teaching methods that use this in these programs. So these projects aim to test this hypothesis. The other main variable in this project was the calibration. The concept of calibration is actually the calibration is the degree of correspondence between judged performance and actual performance. So we ask students to estimate their performance, then we test them in this performance, and then compare their estimations about their performance with their actual performance. And this discrepancy is the calibration of their performance. The closer to zero this discrepancy is, the better calibrated students are. We examine this variable because calibration is closely linked to self-regulated learning and other important factors such as effort exertion, strategy use, and selection of tasks. Well-calibrated students can realize the actual level of their performance, so can set more realistic and more challenging goals. In contrast, miscalibrated students may set unrealistic or easily goals, may be less responsive to external feedback because they believe that they have already mastered, for example, a task, so there is no need to put an effort to improve themselves. Generally, research in physical education and sports has shown that students and athletes are usually inaccurate in estimating their performance. This evidence there are in the field of sports with different kinds of sports, such as in golf, in running, in basketball, and in physical education. Also, students we found that students usually are inaccurate in estimating their performance, and they have the tendency to overestimate their performance. In terms of teaching styles, calibration may have important implications because some styles, such as the self-check styles, involve students in monitoring their performance, so the accuracy of feedback that there is produced in these styles is important and is correlated with students' performance. So the aim of this project was to explore the effects of self-check style, the command style and the practice style on students' executive functions, performance calibration, and sport performance. The impact of these teaching styles on students' motivation was also explored. So the main research question was whether some teaching styles, more than others, can effectively trigger elementary students' executive functions and increase their calibration accuracy of sport performance in physical education. So the project includes 2 independent studies. The first study includes 1 soccer session aiming to help students improve their performance in passing skill. The second study involves 6 basketball sessions, teaching students passing, dribbling, and shooting. 3 teaching styles are involved in both studies, plus a control group only for study 1. Participants in both studies are 5th and 6th grade students, and we use measures for executive functions, actually the design fluency test, and for calibration accuracy, sport performance, and motivational regulations. The design is a pre-test, post-test design with additionally in study 2 we have also a retention measure 1 month after post-test. The interventions in both studies are delivered by school physical education teachers. We want to have implement a field experiment within real-life teaching conditions. So we use physical education teachers that are teaching in their schools. After providing a 2-hour session training about how to use each teaching style, we focus the intervention focus on improving students' technique on the sport skills, but also in their accuracy in this of their performance. We developed ready-to-use lesson plans. The content and the structure of each session was identical for all experimental groups. The only thing that was changed was the teaching style used to deliver this content to experimental groups. Our progress so far, study 1 has completed, implementation and data collection has been completed. We are now in the phase of analyzing the results and to prepare a manuscript for publication. The implementation of the intervention and data collection for study 2 will be completed by the end of this school year, by the end of May. So I will provide you some examples from study 1. The first part of session focused on improving students' soccer technique. All the drills we used was the same for 3 experimental groups. For example, students have to pass each other to exchange passes to improve their technique and passing skill. We have 3 performance criteria that was common to all experimental groups, and each group practice based on the principles of each teaching style. In this slide, you can see the task sheet we use for self-check style. Is the task sheet for 1 student participated in this study has been completed, and the students has to check if each of these performance criteria was met during their practice. The second part of the session, students focus on passing accuracy. So they, in self-recording, their successful passes during their practices. And I also show some first results. It seems that self-check style has a positive effect on students' inhibition and cognitive flexibility. We have an interaction group and by time, both in inhibition and cognitive flexibility. Interestingly, in cognitive flexibility, practice style students who use the practice style also improve in this variable. All these results will be presented in the manuscript that we prepared for study 1. Another manuscript will be prepared for study 2, and presentations in national and international conference will also provide the results of these two studies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Athanasios. The last presentation is exploring teacher and student interaction through the spectrum of teaching style, a case study in Japanese junior high school physical education. And the speaker is Masa. Welcome.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present at this conference. And I also appreciate everyone being here today. My name is Masahiro Ito from Western Colorado University in the USA, and I am originally from Japan and currently studying in the United States, focusing on the spectrum of teaching styles. And today I will present this study exploring teacher and student interactions through the spectrum of teaching styles as a case study. And this is still an ongoing project, so I will not be presenting final results. However, I would greatly appreciate any feedbacks and suggestions. And this study forms a major part of my master's thesis, and it is also part of a larger research project led by Dr. Kanai Haneishi, Western Colorado University. So physical education is often described as a unique subject because students are not learning individually, but together in shared spaces. For example, many learning tasks in PE involve working with others, solving problems as a group, or responding to teammates' actions in real time. Because of this, interaction is not just something that happens occasionally, but something that is embedded in almost every activity. This has led researchers to view interaction as a central part of participation and learning in PE, rather than just a byproduct of activity. At the same time, this perspective has also contributed to a common assumption that interaction will naturally occur as long as students are physically engaged in activities. However, this assumption may overlook an important question. While previous research has clearly established the importance of interaction in physical education, much of this work has focused on student outcomes or the effectiveness of pedagogical models. In other words, we know that interaction matters, and we know that certain teaching approaches can influence participation. However, less attention has been given to how teachers themselves interpret interaction in their everyday practice. For example, how do teachers decide what counts as meaningful interaction, and how do these interpretations influence the way they structure learning environments? These questions remaining underexplored. So previous research has clearly shown that interaction plays a central role in learning in physical education. Studies on cooperative learning and models-based practice, for example, have highlighted how interaction supports participation, communication, and engagement. However, much of this research has focused on outcomes, such as what students achieve, or on the effectiveness of specific pedagogical models. At the same time, research in sport pedagogy has shown that teaching is an interpretive process, shaped by teachers' beliefs and experiences. Despite this, we still know relatively little about how teachers themselves interpret interaction in their everyday teaching practice. In particular, how teachers define meaningful interaction and how these interpretations shape interactional decisions and remains underexplored. Therefore, this study focuses on how teachers make sense of interaction in practice. To address this research gap, this study draws on the spectrum of teaching styles. The spectrum provides a framework for understanding instructional decision-making and how teaching behaviors influence student learning behaviors. In this study, it is used as a lens to examine how interaction is shaped through teaching in practice. This allows us to move beyond viewing interaction as something that simply occurs, and instead understand it as something constructed through instructional decisions. Based on the identified research gap, the purpose of this study is to explore how a physical education teacher perceives and interprets student interaction in real teaching contexts. More specifically, this study focuses on how instructional decisions, such as task design, grouping strategies, and the distribution of responsibility, influence the way interaction occurs during lessons. In addition, the study aims to understand how teachers recognize and define what counts as meaningful interaction, rather than treating interaction as a simple observable behavior. This study approaches interaction as a pedagogical process connected to participation, learning, and student development. By focusing on the teacher's perspective, the study seeks to provide a deeper understanding of how interaction is constructed in practice. To provide an overview, this study focuses on 4 interconnected dimensions. First, perception, how the teacher understands and interprets student interaction. Second, decision-making, how instructional choices shape the learning environment and influence interaction. Third, development, how the teacher interprets students' social and personal growth through participation. Finally, interaction itself, specifically how the teacher defines what counts as meaningful interaction in practice. Together, these dimensions allow us to examine interaction not just as behavior, but as something constructed through teaching and interpreted by the teacher. This slide shows the overall research design. The study begins with a pre-training interview, followed by an online spectrum of teaching styles workshop and a post-training interview. At this study, data collection has been completed up to the post-training interview. The teacher is currently moving into the implementation phase, where a spectrum-based unit is designed and taught. This will be followed by additional interviews, including a final interview focusing specifically on student interaction. This design allows us to examine how the teacher's understanding develops over time. These are examples from the actual online and in-person workshop for PE teachers. The online workshop were conducted via Zoom in 4 sessions. Each session is 90 minutes. The first session focused on reproduction styles. The second one is on production style. The third one is social and personal skills. And the fourth on lesson planning and implementation. And in the in-person workshop, as shown in the photo, we introduced each teaching styles through practical activities and also conducted mini mock lessons. And this study focuses on one physical education teacher in a Japanese public junior high school. And the teacher has 80 years of teaching experience and holds a master's degree in physical education pedagogy. And his main sports specialization is baseball. And prior to this study, he had limited experience with the spectrum of teaching styles. He didn't know the name of a spectrum of teaching styles, and also he doesn't provide a spectrum-based lessons for students. And also this teacher works with junior high school students, typically in grades 7th through 9th. And then this slide presents the data collection process used in this study. The study is based on 4 semi-structured interviews conducted at different stages. The first interview conducted before the training focuses on the teacher background, experiences, and initial understanding of student interaction and spectrum of teaching styles. The second interview takes place after the spectrum of teaching styles training and explores how the teacher's understanding, beliefs, and perspective may have changed. The third interview is conducted after the teaching phase and focuses on the teacher's actual experiences in implementing spectrum-based unit, and including changes, student responses, and instructional decisions. And finally, the fourth interview focuses specifically on student interaction, allowing for a deeper exploration of how the teacher defines and interprets meaningful interaction in practice. Across these interviews, the focus is not only on what happened, but on how the teacher makes sense of their experiences. This slide shows selected examples of teacher responses from different interview phases. It is important to note that this slide is not intended to make direct comparisons, but rather to illustrate the types of ideas expressed as each stage of the study. In the pre-training interview, the teacher's response tend to emphasize discipline structure, and behavioral aspects of student interaction. For example, interaction is often described in terms of cooperation, rule following, and group behavior. In contrast, in the post-training interview, the teacher begins to refer more to how interaction is shaped through teaching, as well as how students take roles and communicate with each other. These examples do not represent final conclusion, but they provide an initial sense of how the teacher is thinking about interaction at different points in the study. And this is a final slide. This shows this summarizes the direction of the study moving forward. At this stage, the analysis is still ongoing, but the findings suggest that interaction in physical education may not be automatic. Instead, it may be actively shaped through instructional decision-making as the teacher's understanding evolves from a focus on control towards lesson design. To further explore this, the study will apply an interpretive thematic analysis. The process will involve familiarization with the data, developing initial cause, identifying connections, and refining themes through an iterative process. As data collection continues, the analysis will also be refined and developed further. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions and comments.
We have enough time for any question or suggestion to the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you for excellent presentations. Vanessa, can I ask you a question, please? I was really interested in the fact that the students, when they got to choose their own pairs, they obviously, their outcomes were more positive. But what's really interesting to me is, in my own experience, is when children choose their own pairs, they tend to choose somebody of a similar ability to themselves. Do you feel that that is the case?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I will try to answer and let me know if it's not. Yeah. I think when they choose the pair, they choose some friends. So often they have the same ability-based level. So we cross finally the two types of dyads we studied, but we had some differences. So I think the relatedness is higher when you have friends, and it can have the same ability base level, but when we are friends, we are more connected, and it influences situational interest and motivation. So the impact of relativeness is higher than the ability-based. So I don't know if I answer well your question, but it's my feeling about the self-selected diets compared to ability-based groups.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for your presentations. It's almost the same question as my colleague, but I was this curiosity. What kind of problem did you have to do this kind of study? Because I think the problem was in the establish the groups by levels, right? And because of that, you have to choose another way of making the groups. Is that correct?
So when we use the ability ability-based groups, the teacher did it. So he has to know well the students, and he has a primary test to see which level the students are. When it's self-selected diets, the students can choose their friends, whatever the ability. So, yeah, it's not the same diet composition and not the same teacher choose for ability-based group and students choose for self-selected diets. So, yeah, it impacts teaching, but it was our choice to test it. Okay. I don't know if I answer the question.
Yeah, can I make another comment?
Yes.
If you consider to have heterogeneous groups,
yes,
could be more feasible for you achieve the social impact that this kind of style is implicit. I don't know if you consider to have groups with different levels, and is the choice of the teacher must be intentional. It's an intentional pedagogical intention for the groups.
Yeah,
it's linked for motivational intrinsic climate. So probably could be interesting if you could do the same study, but with this version.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I had another studies about the diets, and we changed the composition of groups. Sometimes they were with pairs, with friends, and sometimes the teachers, they used ability-based group. And in this study, our results show that the best is to use both. So the teacher, when they use sometimes self-selected diets and sometimes ability-based groups, the students have more pleasure in physical education. So to alternate the groups is the best. Here we don't study it, but I refer to another study we do on the composition of groups, and we had these results. So I think it goes in the same way of your comment. Yeah, thank you.
Very interesting session. I have a question for Athanasius, because studying executive function and so to to see that executive function can be influenced by the teaching styles, so it is amazing. Now, I have a couple of questions. So I would like to know better if you can provide an example, because you said that you had also the control group. So what the control group did, or maybe I missed, I do not know if you said that. And the second one is, so since executive function are related a lot with creativity, what is, in your opinion, the teaching style that can improve creativity for the enhancing of the, or better works of the executive function?
Yes. The control group in the first study was students. The control group attended a classroom-based theoretical lesson about history of ancient Greek. This is a common practice in studies in executive functions to use in physical education, to use a control group without physical education, just attending a theoretical lesson. About the second question, indeed, there is creativity is also involved in executive functions. Probably the teaching styles that tested in this study may not so appropriate for enhancing creativity, but there are other styles such as divergent discovery that can promote even better the students' creativity. In a line of research that conducted with Marius Goudas a few years ago, we use physical activity games, cognitively enriched, and some of these activities were based on divergent discovery. For example, we ask students to act with many different ways, or to put a ball in with different ways, or to transfer a ball in the edge with many different ways. So these styles may be better for enhancing students' creativity. Actually, when we are thinking, when planning this research project, we are thinking about comparing self-check style with divergent discovery. But I think there are some methodological issues that we have to solve, because the content matters in triggering executive functions. That is, even just participating in physical activity program may help students develop their executive functions. So there is a methodological issue how to isolate the effect of each specific teaching style, and which is the control group, in order to be sure that these effects can attribute to each specific style. I don't know if I respond to your question. Okay, thank you.
We can chat later about that. You can also play with robots later. So did you see the monk robot in Roure today? But this is very simplistic.
Any other question for the audience?
I have a question for Mr. Ido. Thank you for your presentation. Since your study focused on teacher-student interaction through the spectrum of the teaching style, and you collect multiple sources of data, and could you explain how you integrated these different data sources in your analysis? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm not sure I can understand your questions. Is it a question for my data?
Your data, yeah.
Okay.
You collect multiple data, right?
Yeah, I have a multiple data. I have mainly interviews, and then also we recorded as teachers class unit, but this is a still ongoing research. So my participant is not yet done his class unit. So we are still planning to his spectrum-based classes. And then also we provide for students some questionnaires, but I'm not using for my master's thesis.
Okay, thank you.
No more questions or suggestions? No?